Once again, as we travel through this Christmas season, this liturgical season of Christmas, Isaiah once again gives us that contrast of dark and light. He tells us today, "See, darkness covers the earth, and thick clouds cover the peoples, but upon you the Lord shines." And if you recall, or if you were here at the midnight mass on Christmas, we were told from Isaiah that the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. The scriptures will use this imagery of light and dark. Light to reveal us the way to God and God himself. Darkness, our strugglings, our wanderings, even our turning away from that light, or not looking or seeing that light. It's imagery we all understand, not just in the religious sense. We understand it in many aspects of life. Right now, the crowd's rushing to see Star Wars, want to see the battle between the good guys and the dark side, right? The old westerns, the good guys had the white hats, the bad guys had the black hats, right? We've always made that distinction. Our universities, with some of the symbols that they use in their logos and other emblems are going to be some type of light, a lantern or a torch or a light, being the light of wisdom and truth and understanding, meant to guide us as we move forward. And even within our church setting, we have our pastoral candle in the back that's lit at baptisms, it's lit at funerals, and comes into this church in the darkness of the Easter Vigil, representing, we're told, the light of Christ that cuts through the darkness and reveals the Father's love and presence. And as John tells us on Christmas morning in chapter 1 of John's Gospel, that the darkness doesn't overcome this light. We desire and prefer, I suspect, the light over the darkness. Even though it's 8:10, 8:15 in the morning, we'd still prefer to have the lights on right now than off, right? And if you were here 8 hours ago, you'd really want to have the lights on, so you didn't walk into things or trip over things and get ourselves hurt. We get injured if we're walking in a darkened room, particularly one we're not familiar with. So we desire that light. And that's being captured in our story today from Matthew of the Magi. Their desire for knowledge, their desire for truth, their desire, the human desire, for something more. And their curiosity, they come across the light of the star. In time of discernment, they take it upon themselves to find out what this star means. And that search is disruptive for them. It changes their lives. It's not, oh, there's a star over there, I wonder what it's about, and kind of continue doing whatever they were doing. They disrupt their lives to do this journey to find out what this light means. And that light leads them to Christ. And what do when they come into the presence of Christ? They give the Lord what they have. They give the Lord their treasures. Well, that describes the Christian life. When we encounter the Lord on our journey of faith, that sometimes isn't as direct like this, perhaps it's more like this, but when we encounter the Lord in the midst of that journey, we're caught in the awe of the scene before us. And we too are meant to offer our treasures, the treasures of our hearts and minds, the treasures of our strength, and even those of our weaknesses, so that we may experience the healing that this little Christ child offers to us and offers to all of humanity. This encounter with the light changes us, because it's a journey that we begin to see not as the world sees, as Jesus tells us so often in the scriptures, but as God sees, seeing with the eyes of faith and truth and life. Love. There's a challenge in that, though. There's a challenge in that light, as much as we want the light. The light also reveals things sometimes we don't want to see. We have the advantage of the light right now. We can see out kind of see out the windows with the stained glass windows and all that, the light coming through. We can see the images that are there. What's so? The light going through a window, we can also see when the window needs to be cleaned, right? And if that stuff that begins with an S was falling from the sky this morning, you'd see it piling up and be blocking our view out the window, right? We know that something's different. Something needs to be changed. We need to clean the window, or we find a blemish, or something that needs to be fixed. We turn the lights on in the room, or out in the light, we can see, the grass has to be cut, or this has to be painted, or this has to be cleaned. We see the blemishes, the things that need to change. And we sometimes don't want to see those things. And sometimes our reaction may not be the Magi, but maybe more like Herod in all of Judea, we're told. We can become greatly troubled when we see what the light reveals to us. Because when we see it, there's a push to change. There's something that we need to take care of. And perhaps it's a small thing or a big thing. It doesn't matter. But it's something that's been a part of us for a long time. And it's hard to change our routines. It's hard to change for what might be the unknown. And we're going to resist or even perhaps ignore or somehow discredit what we're seeing or put a spin on what we're seeing that's actually not what's being revealed. And what this tells us is we still struggle with that darkness even with the light. That should be obvious. Even in Isaiah, I mentioned the midnight mass. That's from chapter 9. That was written in the 7th century. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. The chapter we heard today is from chapter 60. It wasn't written by Isaiah. It was written by a disciple of Isaiah in the 7th century. So they're still struggling with this darkness and this light. And the church uses these words from the 7th and 8th century to describe the situation when Christ was born 700 years later. And oftentimes when we hear these words, we can think to ourselves, gee, this describes the situation we're living in 2020. We still struggle with that darkness, not just out there, but in here. In fact, the darkness out there won't be resolved until we take care of the darkness that's found within us. And so as we begin this new year, this new month, we also begin a homily series. You didn't think you could get away from one that long, did you? And our homily series this month is going to be baggage. That stuff that we carry that blocks the light or that we refuse to let go of, to grasp the light. The image that kept coming to my mind wasn't so much baggage as in luggage, but it's a commercial. You see it on TV. It's for one of these websites that you can resell property or things that you own that you're trying to get rid of. And it shows the guy on a cliff. He has one hand. He's hanging on for dear life. If he lets go, he's going to fall to his death. And he's hanging on, slipping his grip. And in his other hand is a bowling ball. It's his lucky bowling ball, even though he doesn't go bowling anymore. He doesn't want to let go of it, right? And he refuses to let go. If he lets go, he can be saved. Hanging on, he's risking everything. And his friend's advice to him is, let it go. In fact, I think that's the name of the company, let it go. Well, that's a challenge for us to grow spiritually, to reach our full potential as children of God. We need to let it go. We need to let go of that baggage that weighs us down. That baggage that prevents us from moving forward. That baggage that prevents us from reaching our true potential as beloved children of God, made in His image and likeness, of achieving what we could achieve things that we didn't think possible ourselves. And in our series this month, we're going to focus on just one aspect of letting go. It seems small, but it's pretty big, and that is forgiveness. One, our need to be forgiven. And two, our need to forgive others. That's probably the toughest part of those two, right? But both of those are necessary for us to let go, to open ourselves up to God's graces and healing. Here we are in the midst of the Christmas season, the church decorations, the Christmas decorations are still up, the lights are still up. You drive around town, you still see the lights in front of people's houses and the beautiful scenes that people put out. The Christmas, all the joy and energy that was present in this church and the family celebrations. But what do we celebrate? Yes, that God became one of us, that God came into the world, the Word became flesh, but we also celebrate the fact that he came into the world, we're told in chapter 1 of Matthew, to save us from our sins, to save us from the darkness. And not just out there, but in here. So as we begin this new series over the next few weeks, some questions for us to reflect on while we go about our lives and while we gather at this table. What is it that's holding us back from following the path to God, the path that the light reveals to us, to our fulfillment? What is it that prevents us from accepting God's love and mercy and sharing it with others? Or what prevents us from seeking his forgiveness or forgiving others? What is it that we need to let go of in our lives? What areas of our life need to be illuminated by Christ's light? Jesus tells us elsewhere in Matthew's gospel, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest." He's offering to help remove that baggage from our lives. He's offering to help us live in joy, to live in love, to live in peace. But we can't do it if we ignore that light. We can't do it if we spend all of our energies trying to hold on to all this stuff, all these hurts that we need to let go of. The Lord is offering us his help, his grace, his healing. We need to allow him to help us.